Libertarians voting for lockdown. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.Heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee and let's have a look at what's happened in Melbourne. Now, Fiona Patten, leader of the Reason Party in Victoria, an evolution of the original Sex Party, and, well, what she labelled as an Civil Libertarian alternative, has voted for the lockdowns in Victoria. Now, Dan didn't get the 12 months he wanted. The Liberal Party, or the opposition, didn't get the 1 month extensions and then resumption of government that they wanted, because the crossbench sided with Dan for a compromise of only 6 months. Now, the Reason Party, if we have a look here, this is their party. I mean, they've got one member in the upper house, Fiona Patten, and, well, let's look at some of their Victorian policies. It all sounds good. A proven broker of good sense, really. Protect kids and leave adults alone. Money where it's needed. Effective, positive social change. Now, civil libertarianism. Well, what's the general definition of it? And I'll just read the quote from Wiki for all of you that may not be familiar with it. It's a strain of political thought that supports civil liberties, which emphasizes the supremacy of individual rights and personal freedoms over and against any kind of authority. Now, that is a very broad position, a very broad definition. Now, do you think giving the government 6 months of additional lockdowns would put into question any claims that this party is even libertarian? I would argue so. I would say it's simply an evolution of the old Sex Party and just has a particular tangent that they're pushing. And they most certainly are centre-left. So, let's have a look at a few claims here, because the LDP, the Libertarian Party down in Victoria, they've also got members in the upper house. They didn't vote for this lockdown. So let's have a look at Fiona's opinion piece that was published in The Age. Premier Daniel Andrews' move to extend the current state of emergency out to 18 months was mishandled from the moment he stepped onto the podium on Monday in the latest episode of the mandatory television viewing that has become Victoria's daily dose of Dan. Now, 18 months. What happens here? I don't even recall it being 18 months. That never got through to me when I was watching the news. What happens here is that people can, there's a psychological move or a negotiating move where you anchor something. You can anchor a price, you can anchor a starting point. So they may have I assume they'd anchored at 12 months when they didn't even want that, because you want to have something to give, to negotiate. So you're good, politicians can look like they're doing something for you when they may have already made deals all behind the tables. It's theatre, everyone. We need to enjoy it. We need to enjoy it. So, like many Victorians of all political persuasions, I've watched with some admiration as the Premier and Chief Health Officer, Professor Sutton, have taken to the stage every day and delivered us the facts about this pandemic. They have talked us through the frightening case numbers and hopeful statistics, and yet they never mention the recovery rates. That's something that really quite frustrates me. They don't mention the recovery rates. If we had that total running up there, it would look quite good. They've compassionately delivered the tragic news of the growing death toll that the pandemic has inflicted on our community. I think the public has appreciated it. In broad terms, I have had no real issues with the current declaration of a state of emergency. Well, there you go. There you go. So, the supremacy of individual rights, there's her line. There's a line. Those all disappear with regards to the fear that's generated by this and the state of emergency that's declared. Everyone has a point where they will willingly sacrifice other people's rights for their own safety. And that's now we're learning what the Reason Party, where their position is. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just needs to be, articulated, and people need to be aware of that so they can make that decision at the ballot box. So, they've had to make decisions on the fly, and I get that. For the most part, we've seen an appropriate response to the crisis we're facing. And it allowed us to stem the transmission of the pandemic. So here's the thing. She considers it an appropriate response. Based on what? Based on what? Where's the economic modelling? What are the alternative outcomes? How many jobs have been cost? How many lives have been destroyed? How many businesses have been destroyed? This is the thing, we'll never know. There needs to be a royal commission into it, or at least an investigation into the handling of this. Because what's concerning is that this will become an ongoing trend in our political institutions here in Australia, where they will make such drastic interventions into the economy to pretty much destroy our businesses and our hopes and dreams, just over a concern for our safety. They're looking out for us, everyone. The state of emergency gives the government extraordinary power and almost unchecked ability to make new laws and override existing laws administratively without Parliament, and that's the danger. This is the advantage Victoria has over Queensland. They at least have an upper house. They have an upper house where you have, like Fiona here, from the Reason Party, that will be able to negotiate it. Without an upper house, there wouldn't even be a chance, like in Queensland. To extend those powers to 18 months. And still, let me know in the comments, do you remember ever seeing 18 months here? I think she's intentionally focusing on the 18 months when most of it was 12, is to anchor it, to look like that she's done a good deal for all of us. Only 6 months of lockdown. Remember, originally as a civil, or an alternative for civil libertarian voters. Without checks and balances is a misstep. In my view, it's an overreach. Well, perhaps 6 months is an overreach. Perhaps we've already had an overreach. To think that for a year and a half Victorians will not be living in the state of Victoria but in the state of emergency is unacceptable to me and nearly all of my crossbench colleagues, and most importantly the Victorians we represent. My first preference would be for the COVID-19 specific legislation that deals directly with the issues at hand. Something that deals directly with the effects of the crisis we are experiencing now and measures to enable us to continue to live, work, and play safely in the state. Now, here's the thing. There is evidence and arguments and positions from well-respected epidemiologists regarding different methods of disease mitigation. They were critical of everything that has been implemented, and I've looked at that in videos in the past. And if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you've seen those videos. Is the price that we're paying through destroyed businesses and destroyed lives worth it? Worth it. Look at the statistics of the mortality statistics, and I know this sounds cruel, but when you're at that age and you're in a care home, is it worth billions of dollars to give you a few extra months? If that cannot happen, an extension of a state of emergency could be achieved in a safer and more democratic way, with appropriate checks, balances, and oversight. I want to see this bill redrafted to permit 3 or possibly 6 months extensions, but only if supported by the majority in Parliament. Now, I'm going to take a guess here. I would imagine that Reason is behind euthanasia. Let's have a look. Future life, Social Security, because, you know, it seems a bit ironic. A bit ironic, particularly with some of the examples of where that's been abused overseas. Anyway, I'm making a guess. I can't see it here. I'd bet a carton on it, though. So, that way we're not dispensing with democracy and we're not removing civil liberties without a safety net. But you are removing civil liberties. You definitely are. You admit that here. Parliament is not the government, and they should welcome oversight during this difficult period, not shun transparency. When someone can have a sexual partner to their home for the evening, but can't have just one friend or relative at a safe distance at their residence for a meal, the mental health impacts of which cannot be understated, then something is wrong. Restrictions like this are an example of why we cannot be allowing the government to continue without the oversight of Parliament and to take the input from the community. Well, then why didn't you argue for a 1 month extension? Because she's making some good points. It's right here. It's insane. It's insane you can't even have a friend over for dinner in Victoria. Here's the point. If they're going to have restrictions, the restrictions should be tied to your risk factors. What do you reckon, everyone? If your BMI is at a certain level, then you can't leave your home. Obesity is a risk factor. How would that go for civil liberties? Let me know your opinion on that one. Oh, our police commissioner then in Victoria, he couldn't get out on the street, could he? A lot of them couldn't. A lot of the politicians couldn't go around. I will continue to advocate for a more reasonable amendment to the Public Health Act, and I'm confident that many members of the Legislative Council share this goal. But if the government presses ahead with this bill in its current format, I'll be unable to vote for it. Over the past few days, my phone hasn't stopped ringing, nor my social media buzzing. If I could get a vote for every email I received in the past 2 days about the government's proposal to extend the state of emergency, I would be a shoo-in for the 2022 elections. And that's the real reason here, isn't it? The public is rightly outraged, and they are scared and fed up. They know we will be living in a state of COVID for a very long time, but they do not want to be living in a constant state of emergency. What we can do better. We can find a more reasonable solution. Is this the reasonable solution? Now, if we look here at a previous Roy Morgan poll, most Victorians support the lockdowns, most Victorians support the curfews. And I've looked at this in a previous video, and I'll link to that above if you want to have a look. But if we look here, only 28% want to end the curfew. 28%. So, I mean, that's just one part of this survey. So do Victorians want to support the lockdowns? Are they happy for it? Will Dan get in again? If we have a look here, this is an article from The Age. Andrew's government has struck a deal with state MPs, and this was today. So her piece that was written in The Age was written a few days ago on the 26th, and now she's crossed the floor. Or, well, she hasn't really crossed the floor. She's supported the move. Supported the move. We scroll down here. Scroll down here, we can see key crossbencher Fiona Patten of the Reason Party said the agreement was a fair and equitable outcome and that it looked to have enough support to secure passage. I've indicated that I will vote for a one-off extension of the government's state of emergency powers for 6 months, she said. However, I've requested that the legislation have a sunset clause on this time period, meaning that any future state of emergency will again be limited to 6 months. So, fantastic, so you can have a rolling 6 months. What would you rather, everyone, a rolling 6 month or a rolling monthly? 6 months. Mr. Andrews was quizzed on the roadmap out of stage 4, but was giving little away, saying the number of daily cases was still too high to be able to provide definitive answers. Now, that's the real problem with all of this. That is the fundamental problem with all of this. What we're seeing here is an environment of uncertainty, an environment where businesses can't plan, where people are scared to open up their business, to restock their shelves, to buy a new product, because in an instant, the rules can change. There's an element of risk here, that they're not even planning out the exit strategy out of stage 4. I would have preferred that, Fiona, as a requirement for this 6-month extension. You need to set an exit strategy and goals that we meet that will instantly remove the 6 months lockdown. Where's that? That should be the number one priority. Because businesses can't plan. People can't plan holidays. People can't plan their lives. Even if you had a 6 months lockdown, but you had a goal to reach to, that would be a better outcome. People would feel safer. They could prepare. Psychologically, they could deal with it better. You just take things one day at a time if you know there is an end in sight. But here there doesn't appear to be no end. They're aiming for how many people, how many cases. As always, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Please reach out to a Victorian. Give them a call today and a hug. Well, okay, you can't hug them, but you know what I mean. Take care, everyone. If you're a fan of the channel, there's a few ways you can support us. You can like, share, or subscribe. You can support us financially by joining the channel on YouTube or Patreon. You can use our affiliate links at Amazon, eBay, Independent Reserve, or Kucoin. Buy a merch from HeiseSays, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.